Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Hogblood or Laura and I hope you all are doing okay. Today we're testing some watercolors. My boyfriend got me a little palette as a late birthday present, and it's not just any palette. It's the Van Gogh Muted Color Pocket Box that I've laid my eyes on since last year when visiting an art store with him, and now he got it for me and I wanted to test it with you. I know this set earned some critique due to the bright color selection, but that didn't stop me from wanting it because generally the palette includes colors I really love using in my art anyways. But let's stop talking, let's unwrap the paints and do some swatches. Coming to the swatches. The palette consists out of 12 half pans with the colors Titan Buff, Yellow Ochre, Cam Birch, Quinacridone Rose, Indigo, Olive Green, Sepia, Lavender, Naples Yellow Red, Turquoise Green, Davies Grey, and Neutral Tint. I can say right away that the paints are very pigmented. I, however, let them activate for about 5 minutes before starting to swatch them. I do my swatches a little bit different than I have seen most people do on YouTube. As you can see, I first paint a little square to see how vibrant the pure color is, and then I make a little gradient. I do this because I like to have in mind what the highest saturation of a certain paint is. Also with that, I can tell how dense the pigment is and how much water or time the paint needs to fully activate. The paints themselves felt very nice and velvety. Secondary is up to preference. I personally don't mind the feeling softer paints create while painting. Otherwise, I will just let the swatches speak for themselves. So the colors are all dry now, and yes, I'm very surprised on how well they look and how nice they applied, especially the Quinacridone Rose. I just in general love any rose or pink tones in watercolors. They're my favorite paints, and I'm also very surprised by the turquoise. Yeah, I was really surprised that the dry pan is this vibrant, because turquoise green in watercolor will always have a low tinting strength, and otherwise I'm very surprised, and I just really like the color selection that they have, even though they all are not exactly muted colors, but I do understand why they put them in there. I will get to that while I am painting. But first, what I also did, if you take the brush out, what I really like is that you can take out the palette. And I made another swatch card that I could insert in this palette. Yeah, I also made another swatch card. I really like that. You could also like put some cut paper sheets in there. So this is really a little box you can take with you, and I really like that. The only thing that I dislike so far is the overall layout, because I personally am a very clean artist, and I assume that if I go in with a big brush or a bigger brush and try to stir up some pigment, then it will go everywhere. You don't really have that in the metal tints because the paints are they're separate in there, and they just smear on the rim of the pan. And I am worried that this palette will get very quickly very dirty. And this is a thing that I care about. Obviously, if you don't care about it, then it's not a real issue. I don't know, I am just a very clean artist, and this layout scares me. So, let's see what I can come up with for testing this palette. I think 2 weeks later, nails aren't blank anymore. I finally knew what I wanted to paint and what would fit with the overall vibe of the palette. I decided on a portrait of my OC Robin. I remember when Robin and their design were quite well received on TikTok, when I was still using and posting there, but unlike popular beliefs, Robin is not a girl. They're non-binary and in fact assigned male at birth. But that's not what we're talking about today. I prepared the line art like I usually do for watercolor portraits some days before painting, so the ink can fully dry and cure, so I don't have to fear smudges or bleeding. I also did the basic layers off camera because it's really boring and 90% just drying, so I would have cut that out anyways, but I noticed that these paints have a very strong bloom. Even though I used the same technique as always when letting watercolors bloom, they kinda created a lot of harsh edges because the pigment was just flowing very quickly. It might be due to the paper, but I never had this issue before when using it. That's definitely a thing I need to keep in mind when using these paints. Otherwise, I would like to mention the color mixing, because that is why I wasn't really surprised that they put these few strong, vibrant colors like the quinacridone or the turquoise in the palette. In my usual style of painting, I use a lot of oranges as base tones for paintings, because I like having a warm tint to my art. So for my usual style of painting, I was lacking orange tones. Naturally, you would expect that mixing the 𝐔𝐍𝐁𝐎𝐗 with the quinacridone would create an orange color. However, that is not the case. This mix gave me the base tone I used for Robin's skin. I worked with quinacridone rose as a color a lot before, and while it seems extremely bright and similar to a magenta, it doesn't work like that. Quinacridone will always result in muted mixes. That is the property of that color. I won't go into too much detail about pigment and color theory now, but it will just always mute other colors down because it is already a color that consists out of two primary colors, and so will dull mixes down. Same with the turquoise or the 𝐔𝐍𝐻𝐿. This is why it makes sense to put these colors in there. Sure, if you use these paints right out of the pan, they're not muted, but this isn't why they are in this palette. Due to my lack of orange, I had to think about how I can give my painting a warm feeling. This is where I had to dive into the lovely topic of relative colors. I won't go into too much detail about that as well, but I used a cold indigo next to the more neutral sepia in the hair, for example, to make the sepia look warmer and make it pop due to that. Same with the white fabric. Soft cold washes with lavender to make the shading with yellow ochre look warmer and accentuated. Working with this palette challenged my understanding of color theory and color mixing a lot, which was very interesting and just overall a lot of fun. I personally liked it a lot. So here I am, back again. Some time has passed, as you can see by my now blank nails. But let me show you the piece I created. There it is. This is the piece I made in the speed paint. I did some stuff off camera, like cleaning up some edges and doing the highlights, and I am just so happy with this piece. I don't know, the colors make me really happy. I don't know, if you've seen my last video, then you know why this makes me so happy that I like this piece. I don't know what I've said in the voiceover. The paints applied very smoothly. I really like their color mixing. I personally think it's very vibrant but still very muted. Like the colors are very rich but the overall hues are muted, and I find that really, really appealing. And I need to say that this isn't the only piece I made. I also made this little rose painting that is very quick. I did it as a little practice just to try out the paints more. And I have the same feeling about this one. And I think that the color mixing with this palette is what makes it a muted palette in the end. You have to think more of relative colors, because all of these colors in there, if mixed, create muted colors, which is why this is a muted palette, despite having some bright base tones in there. All I want to say really is that despite having some bright colors in there, the colors are selected because they dull other colors down when mixed, which makes sense that you then put them into a muted palette. Yeah, I think the color selection is very nice. I really like it, and I will definitely use this palette by itself a lot of more times, because I just really like the color mixes that I can get with these paints and what appearance the final painting has due to it. Otherwise, I love the quality of the paints, but that was already expected. I know that Van Gogh technically is a student grade brand, but I personally think that the paints are really nice. So I wouldn't really recommend this palette as something for beginners, but I think you can learn a lot about relative colors and how color theory works if you have a good foundation of it and you get this palette. I think you can improve your understanding of color a lot. Other critique I have is that I really dislike the case. I already said it before, but working in this case makes me anxious. It makes me anxious because I am scared that I get the paint everywhere. The brush is another thing, but because it tends to fall apart during painting. That was a little bit annoying. You didn't see it during the process because I switched out the brushes. And overall, I would say this palette is definitely worth it. I really enjoyed painting with it, and I definitely will use it more often. But overall, I'm really happy with this palette, and I really recommend it. With that, I hope you had some fun with this review. If you own this palette, let me know what you think of it and what your experiences are. Do you want it, or would you consider getting another pocket box over this one? I'm curious about your opinions. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more random art videos, if you like this video of course and want to see more. Until next time, stay safe and stay hydrated.